This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Janet Stewart is off. It was another day of frustration for the families of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. They met with federal officials in Ottawa to talk about searching the landfill for the remains of two Indigenous women. It comes on the day of the International Day of Action to search the landfills. Rallies were held in 17 cities across Canada, including Winnipeg. CBC's Brittany Greenslade has more.
One by one, they stood together in a sea of red, their voices getting louder and louder each week.
Search the landfill and quit making excuses.
More than 150 Manitobans gathered on the steps of the legislature today, demanding again for the province to search the landfill for the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. The two Indigenous women are believed to be the victims of a serial killer.
We want our women home. Give them some respect. Give us some respect.
The rally in Winnipeg is just one of 17 across the country, part of a day of action organized by the women's families, a continued push for government to search the Prairie Green landfill and bring their remains home for proper burials.
I think it's very important for the community. It's very important for reconciliation and for those remains to be found.
In Ottawa, a rally was held outside Parliament as politicians returned to the House of Commons from summer break. Family members of the slain women traveled to meet with the federal Crown Indigenous Relations Minister, but left disappointed.
His words mean nothing at this point. We're angry. We're tired. But you know what? I feel like they keep stalling, they keep pushing this off.
Today, they are yet again leaving without a commitment to search the landfill.
We come all this way for this meeting for nothing.
Morgan's daughter Cambria says these meetings are re-traumatizing the families.
What if it was your mother? What if it was your sister? What if it was your daughter?
For 10 months, the families have pleaded for a search. A feasibility study funded by the feds deemed it possible, although not without risk, and a cost between $84 and $184 million. Manitoba's premier does not support a search. These families say it will happen.
It's going to get done, with or without their help. We're ready to take that job on.
No matter how long it takes. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The mayor of Winnipeg wants more people living and working downtown to help improve safety. That includes City of Winnipeg employees. That was Scott Gillingham's message today to business owners. They were part of a crowd who came to hear what the city's doing to deal with vandalism, crime, and social challenges. CBC's Josh Crabb was there.
Keeping this coffee shop running has been a grind for Daniel Ekoboski. He says business hasn't been what he expected. He moved this past January to a former Second Cup location in Winnipeg's downtown.
I remember this place was packed, and it's not like that.
He says foot traffic hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels, due in part to remote work arrangements.
This is killing the businesses, especially downtown.
Mayor Scott Gillingham talked about the issue with this crowd of business owners put together by the Downtown Winnipeg Biz.
I want to see City Winnipeg employees working from their offices. Not their home offices, frankly. Their offices, and especially those in the downtown.
1,500 city workers have been approved to work from home under a flexible work agreement. Of those, 275 work primarily from home full-time. Gillingham says the city has to compete with the private sector when hiring, but he wants it to lead by example by bringing workers back downtown.
I think that people working in the office, engaging with the public one-on-one, face-to-face is critical.
Remote work will be discussed again later this week at an executive policy committee meeting. It's not just the city. Manitoba Hydro says 2/3 of downtown staff near Dan's Cafe work remotely Mondays and Wednesdays. Downtown Winnipeg Biz CEO Kate Fensky says area businesses feel it.
Public sector workers make up half the downtown workers, so what government does matters.
It's not just a lack of foot traffic. Ekwaboski has also experienced vandalism. Someone smashed one of the coffee shop's windows, and people have come in the store and pushed over the cookie jars that used to be sitting on top this display case.
If you are downtown, people, they come in and then they have to be safe.
The mayor says Winnipeg police are increasing foot patrols, but he wants social services on the same page to help people with addiction, mental health, and homelessness. Despite complex challenges, Ekwaboski has hope business will get better. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg police say a crash that sent 2 people to hospital last night was caused by street racing. 2 cars crashed at Portage and Sturgeon Road around 8 p.m. Police say the 2 cars had been racing westbound on Portage when a 3rd vehicle turned onto Sturgeon and was hit by one of the other cars. Both people who were injured are now in stable condition. The drivers of the vehicles that were racing are facing charges. A Killarney woman is filing a complaint with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission. She says she lost out on a job because she's pregnant. Emily Manuluk recently applied for a part-time cashier job at Boundary Co-op. She mentioned during the interview she's 3 months pregnant. Manuluk alleges that after the interview, she was told to reapply after her baby was born. She's now filing a complaint for discrimination based on her sex.
The HR person that I had an interview with said, I really didn't want to make this call. We just think it's best that you apply after the baby's been born, just because we think it'll be quite difficult to hire you, train you, and then have to train yet another person when you go on maternity leave.
CBC reached out to Boundary Co-op. They declined to comment. In 2022, the Manitoba Human Rights Commission saw 221 complaints of discrimination. 30 were based on sex. The Progressive Conservative Party took their re-election campaign in a new direction today, discussing something they haven't talked about before. CBC's Bartley Kivas joins us live in the newsroom. Bartley, what is the new PC direction?
Well, the Tories spent the first 2 weeks of the campaign talking mostly about tax cuts. Today, they took on territory the NDP has been mining for weeks: healthcare. In the morning, PC candidates Rochelle Squires and Kevin Klein promised to spend another $30 million a year to recruit healthcare workers. Now, 2/3 of this money would be spent in Winnipeg. Then, this afternoon, leader Heather Stephenson promised $10 million to help build an Indigenous-run addictions treatment center. The Quest Health Recovery Center would have 180 beds, space for both men and women. It would be run by Chemawawan Cree Nation, whose chief, Clarence Easter, has endorsed the PCs. Stephenson made this announcement on the same day of nationwide protests, as you heard, against her decision not to search a landfill for murdered Indigenous women.
This is to prevent those things, those horrible tragedies from happening. And so that's what we're doing here today.
This pair of PC health announcements prompted a sarcastic response from the NDP, which has accused Stephenson and PC Health Minister Audrey Gordon of hiding from any discussion about health.
Today I want to welcome Heather Stephenson to this year's election campaign. Today is the first day that she's coming to make an announcement about health care.
The NDP promised today to improve surgical capacity at Grace Hospital in Winnipeg.
Meanwhile, a candidate made some unflattering comments about their own party leader. What happened there, Bart?
Well, Tim Dyack, the PC candidate for St. James, told a constituent he does not think Stephenson will remain in her job for long. And Dyack was asked about this today, and he said politicians take a lot of abuse, including elected officials such as a party leader.
Well, I'm not applying for that job. I don't belittle anybody who does, but you got to understand, this type of bullying that you see around here is premeditated, and then you have to be accounting for the stuff that is not, that's a little more volatile.
In a statement, the PC said they're disappointed by Dyack's comment and added that Tory candidates are free to speak their minds. Stephenson said she supports Tim Dyack and cited his work as a Winnipeg police officer.
Now, one of the other media outlets held a leaders debate this morning, and Stephenson was left to explain her party's position on something called parental rights. What's the controversy about?
Well, right before the election campaign formally started, the PCs promised to give parents more rights. They haven't specified precisely what that means. And Stephenson said today that specification, those details, they will come after the election's over. Manitoba's Liberal leader accused Stephenson of igniting a moral panic.
This is a made-up problem. We already have systems in place to deal with this, and the PCs are pretending that there's a problem that isn't there to scare people and to frighten parents.
Now, the PCs are advertising their stance on parental rights, but so far, no announcements about it since the start of the campaign. And you're about to hear more about that. Emily.
Thank you, Bart. That was the CBC's Bartley Kivas. With the election just 2 weeks away, we want to hear more about what Manitobans are thinking about leading up to October 3rd. One of the things we asked voters to weigh in on is parental rights. CBC's Alana Cole has more.
CBC Manitoba wants to hear more from Manitobans about how and why they vote. One way we're doing that is collaborating with Probe Research on a series of focus groups. This one included 9 voters from outside Winnipeg, including people who live in ridings of Dawson Trail, Midland, and Brandon East. One issue that came up was parental rights.
Well, good morning, everyone.
The PCs say they want to expand parental rights. Some are concerned that means parents would be notified if a student changes their name or pronouns at school, even if the child doesn't want that shared. Here's some of what the focus group had to say.
We have a lot of research showing that schools that incorporate SOGI policies and visible displays of support, and where the kids have somewhere where they can feel safe, even if their parents are not supportive of who they are, is beneficial because it's who they are.
I think there has to be that parental voice in the upbringing of your own children. Yep. They are growing, they are learning. You have to guide them.
To me, it's about treating the kid in the way that's gentle and supportive for the kid, but I really am against leaving parents out of the loop.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
because,
so kind of both. Yeah.
I mean, it's possible to care about parental rights and care about the kids.
Another question put to the focus group, what's their big election issue? Take a listen to what some people had to say.
Probably my number one issue is funding for public programs, including education and healthcare.
The biggest issue for me going into this election is going to be education.
We do not have a very good network of addiction services, safe injection.
Advancing Manitoba's needs, but also pushing back against any federal overstep that may exist.
The voters were also asked how many people are changing their vote, meaning traditionally they voted for one party, but this year they're thinking of switching. 4 people raised their hand. Another said she'd like to change, but there isn't a candidate representing the party she favors in her riding. Diana Newman would have voted for the Keystone Party.
I feel very strongly about all of the freedoms that were taken away from us over the last several years, and that can't happen again.
Cassidy Klassen is one of the people planning to change her vote.
Normally, my riding is typically conservative, and that's how I voted normally. But I have been really disappointed in how the Conservatives handled the COVID pandemic and everything that kind of happened in that area. So I will be, I think, leaning more left this time.
Interesting.
Which is not typical for me.
This is just part of the conversation. You can watch the whole focus group on our YouTube channel. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Join us this Thursday as Manitoba's 3 main party leaders go head-to-head in a televised provincial leaders debate. We're teaming up with CTV and Global to bring you an hour-long, commercial-free debate right here at 6 p.m. Thursday, September 21st. It'll be moderated by Mary Agnes Welch from Probe Research with questions by a panel of journalists. We'll also bring you live analysis immediately after the debate at 7 p.m. You can watch that on our website and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. A big day on the pro women's hockey circuit for St. Anne, Manitoba's Jocelyn Larocque.
Toronto is pleased to pick in the second overall pick Jocelyn Larocque.
Larocque is chosen second overall in the inaugural draft of the Professional Women's Hockey League. The 35-year-old will be playing for the same GM and coach she worked with on Canada's Olympic team. Larocque was considered the toughest opponent by all her peers on Team Canada.
I'm so excited. I mean, to play for Gina, play for Troy, and the players they've already signed. I'm so excited.
Unanimous decision.
Other Manitobans drafted include Delorain's Ashton Bell, drafted in number 8, Brandon's Kristen Campbell at 14th, and Katie Tabin of Winnipeg elected in the 5th round. Time now for a look at the forecast with CBC meteorologist John Sauter. John, today it felt a bit more like June than September, I think.
I agree, yeah. 27 degrees earlier this afternoon. Here's a look at the current numbers. And we did have a little bit of cloud drift over us late in the day. So our temperature did drop to about 25.5. And then once that cloud started to thin out a little bit here in the Red River Valley, climbed back up slightly. It has been a rather windy day, at times gusting over 60. Right now we're at 37, gusting to 48 out of the south. These winds will start to relax, but not until later this evening. That cloud I talked about, nothing really across the north, but there it is across the Red River Valley. We zoom in on this and we can look at radar and the cloud cover and see that there are a few showers falling out of the cloud. A lot of this is just evaporating before it reaches ground, and you can see the clear sky now just reaching the Portage area, and that's what will move over our region as we head into the night tonight. So here's a look at the overnight period. A little bit more cloud moves across the north into tomorrow morning. This is really just a sun-cloud mix. It'll be another warm day across the north, but lots of sunshine here across the south, not just Tuesday morning, but right on into the afternoon. And the big difference will be the wind or lack of wind on Tuesday. We see the pressure gradient kind of relaxing, so we're not seeing pressure systems squeezing up against one another. But yeah, a lot less in the way of wind and similar temps as you're about to see. On Wednesday, we do see some rain across the north. High pressure over central parts of the prairies that will keep this rain hopefully to the south. I think on Thursday, though, that changes as this system is developing in North Dakota and kind of moves our way. I want to show you the upper level atmosphere because as we look at this mild air, it is sitting right over the eastern prairies, and we've got cool air out to the west and another pocket of cool air out to the east of us. And what this is called is an omega block. It's a blocking pattern with high pressure in the middle, and it kind of resembles that Greek letter omega. So that's why it's called an omega block. So back to this pattern, and this will change. The upper ridge kind of breaks down through the end of the week, and we get a little cold pool, or I should say cool pool of air over southeastern Manitoba, northwestern Ontario, just in time for the weekend. But again, warm air is building to the west. May even see warmer temperatures farther north on Saturday than we'll see here across the south. 13 degrees tonight under a clear sky. The winds really drop off overnight and stay light through tomorrow. Tomorrow's high 28 under mainly sunny skies. And then in the long range, we stay with the warm temps, but then that Thursday night, Friday morning time period could see another low pressure bring some rain late in the week, and maybe another one for the weekend, but I'll show you that in the 7-day forecast.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Iranian communities around the world and here in Winnipeg say it's time the Iranian regime came to an end. The call for change started a year ago after the death of Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old died in police custody after being arrested for improperly wearing a head covering. Since that day, ongoing international protests continue to call for more rights for women. Ariane Arianpour, president of the Iranian community of Manitoba, says people in West Asia are being killed for raising their voices and need support.
Each and every day of the continued ruling of the regime means more and more women and men and children being killed, tortured, and raped. And it is also important to keep the pressure up to help people who are fighting with bare hands with one of the most ruthless regimes in history.
Hundreds of people in Iran, including dozens of children, have been killed in anti-government protests over the last year. Hundreds of Winnipeggers of all ages came together for the 43rd annual Terry Fox Run. The event in Assiniboine Park was one of dozens held across the country, raising millions of dollars over the decades for cancer research. Terry Fox's older brother, Fred, was in Winnipeg for yesterday's run. He says the movement sparked by Terry's run back in 1980 changed the landscape for cancer treatment in Canada.
He said, even if I don't finish, we need others to continue. It's got to keep going without me. And Canadians for 43 years have held on to that challenge that Terry gave us. And it's inspiring to see the people out here doing that.
Organizers of the Winnipeg Terry Fox Run say they reached their goal of raising $60,000 for cancer research. The Sikh Society of Manitoba held a special food bank event. The organization partnered with Pride Truck Sales yesterday in Winnipeg to hand out free groceries. The food bank aimed to help international students, newcomers, and low-income families. Organizer from Pride Truck Sales, Gurpreet Singh, says, like everyone else, international students are struggling with inflation and the high cost of living.
There are lots of international students that come to Manitoba. Primarily it's because of cost of living, good affordability rate, but it's again, depending upon the current inflation, it's impacting everyone.
Singh says Pride Truck Sales has also organized other food banks across Canada. An Indian restaurant in Winnipeg's West End is also making sure its community students are well fed. Bread and Biryani on Ellis and Maryland is running a tiffin service for international students. Common in India, a tiffin is a round metal container filled with a light meal. The owners of Bread and Biryani want to make sure the food is affordable for students and help with some of the feelings of being homesick. CBC's Jim Agapito spoke to the couple who runs the restaurant.
Name is Bread and Biryani, and of course it's a fusion of both the East Indian cuisine as well as the Canadian ones.
And we can add.
The tiffin service is absolutely not new, of course. It has got the roots over there in India. What we have got over here, again, it is a little bit revised version of the tiffin, and it is for the students, especially the South Asian students.
They give a very good taste of the food. So many students, when you used to come here, they talk to us, they tell us about their experience. The student, after working 1 year here, he was not having enough money to buy food. So my husband, he gave him a personal call. He called him, he said, don't worry about money, take the food every day from us. And now he has got the job. He has moved to another province with his job, and he's very happy.
We started making the tiffins for them. So you can say helping them out in the daily chorus and giving them good, substantial food at very low prices.
A lot of the restaurants, they would lower the prices for international students, but they would not deliver the quality that this restaurant gave us, you know. So I just came in the beginning as a new customer, just tried their biryani. I really loved it, so that's why I asked for their tiffin service at the end, yeah.
How many do you think you do a day of these?
So it is hundreds. This is naan bread. It is having mango, green chilies, carrot. We feel so excited to serve them.
You're helping so many people.
Yes.
It's like what I eat every day at home in India. So it's the same feeling. That's why I choose this restaurant. It's just so fresh, and the customer service is also really good. So that's why I come here.
Coming up, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is accusing the government of India of being involved in the fatal shooting of a Canadian Sikh leader, a claim that will have seismic effects on an already shaky bilateral relationship. More on that story after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Canadian security officials say there's credible evidence that the government of India may have been involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was shot to death outside a Sikh temple in Surrey on June 18th.
Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty. It is contrary to the fundamental rules by which free, open, and democratic societies conduct themselves. As you would expect, we've been working closely and coordinating with our allies on this very serious matter.
The 45-year-old Nijjar was an activist campaigning for an independent Sikh homeland. He was shot by 2 gunmen as he sat in his truck in the temple parking lot. His death sparked outrage in the Sikh community and triggered a number of protests around the world. Ottawa has expelled a senior Indian diplomat. The head of the research and analysis wing of India's Foreign Intelligence Agency in Canada has been ordered out. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly says she's been clear that Canada expects India's cooperation in the investigation of the killing. Meanwhile, Canada's opposition leaders expressed their condolences to the Nijjar family. They also demanded justice and called on India to cooperate with the investigation.
Canadians deserve to be protected on Canadian soil. We call on the Indian government to act with utmost transparency as authorities investigate this murder, because the truth must come out. We must know who performed the assassination and who was behind the assassination.
It is now an important time to send a clear message. As a democratic country, as a country that respects the rule of law, what will be our response? I want people to know that as leader of the New Democratic Party, I will use every tool at my disposal to ensure that Canada uses every tool and every power of a democratic nation to bring those responsible to justice.
Members of Parliament are back in the House of Commons for the fall sitting. Over the summer, polls suggested there was a shift in political momentum to the Conservatives and leader Pierre Poilievre. That has the Liberals focusing on housing and affordability issues to try to win over voters. CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
With MPs returning to the House of Commons, the hints Canadians could expect the government to get into fewer shouting matches were there.
They're looking for us to work together and not to play partisan games.
Oral questions, question orale.
But clearly not extended to all in the opposition.
After the summer that these Liberals have had, even the Prime Minister must admit that he's not worth the cost. 8 years after he promised to make housing more affordable, he doubled the cost, doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments. Mr. Speaker, it took him 8 years to cause this housing hell. How long will it take to fix it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we said we'd work with municipalities to get housing built faster, and that's exactly what we're doing right across the country, including, for example, with the City of London, where we've got a deal done that fast-tracks the creation of over 2,000 additional housing units over the next 3 years.
That's hardly the only math on the Prime Minister's mind. Over the summer, the Conservatives have climbed in opinion polls, leaving them within reach of forming government. Much of that through rhetoric on housing costs spiraling out of control, a reality Trudeau acknowledged in an exclusive interview with CBC's Front Burner.
I'd always say we could have moved faster. Absolutely, there's always more to do. So the question that people will ask politically over the coming years is, which government or which potential government has the solutions to this really big problem? And that's what people are going to look at, not what is the perfect way to do it, who has the best plan, who has the track record, who has the ability to bend this curve.
Trudeau's shown his hand for some of that plan already, with a recent announcement about waiving the GST for construction of new rental units. On Monday, his government also vowed to introduce a National Farmer Care Act and have a vote by the end of this sitting, a long-time ask of the NDP, vowing now to force the Liberals to pass the legislation.
We have heard the Liberals in the past say they can't meet deadlines. I mean, they're always looking for excuses to get out of things.
Behind that talk, the confidence and supply agreement with the NDP helping the Liberals hold on to power is still in place until the end of 2025. Meaning time could be Trudeau's biggest ally this fall as he tries to turn his electoral fortunes around. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal government says it's reached an agreement with Canada's major grocery chains to rein in food prices. It comes after top grocery executives met with federal cabinet ministers this morning in Ottawa. CBC's Ashley Burke has the details.
How do you feel about being summoned here, sir?
It's an image the government wants Canadians to see.
We're hoping for a productive meeting. Thank you.
The CEOs of Canada's grocery giants called into the industry minister's office to address the rising cost of food.
Our government is going to do everything in our power to make sure prices stabilize.
After sinking in the polls this summer, the government's now targeting the country's 5 largest grocery chains, demanding they come up with a plan by Thanksgiving. The Prime Minister spoke to Front-Burner's Jamie Poisson about it.
What kind of plan do you want from them? Do you want them to tell you that they're going to bring grocery prices down, or do you want them to just stabilize prices?
I think stabilizing is the first good thing, but seeing prices come down would be even better.
The meeting ran long, some CEOs dodging the cameras on the way out or saying little.
Everyone in there wants the same thing, which is for Canadians to have better food pricing and for that to cool down, and it will.
The conversation has to include all the manufacturers, producers, farmers, and everybody. It's not just about the retailers.
The industry minister says it's the first time all 5 CEOs have been in the room together, and he's walking out with a commitment.
Bottom line is that they agreed to work with the government to stabilize food prices in Canada.
The opposition says the government should have acted long ago, not once it's in political trouble.
Their response to all this is to hold a big photo op today. The Prime Minister claims food will be affordable by Thanksgiving.
I'm concerned that they're just talking again. And it's been 20 months since the cost of food inflation, has outpaced general inflation.
Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland also addressed the CEOs and reiterated the government's ultimatum that they have 3 weeks to come up with a plan or else could face punitive taxes. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The United States and Iran have completed a prisoner swap. 5 detainees from each country have been freed and billions of dollars in Iranian assets have been released. The deal was brokered by Qatar, and the 5 Americans were flown from Tehran to Doha. They're being flown home aboard a U.S. government plane. Only 2 of the 5 freed Iranians have chosen to return to Iran. 2 others will be staying in the U.S., and 1 is going to an undisclosed third country. The deal also unlocks at least $6 billion owed to Iran for oil purchases. The money will be held in restricted accounts in Qatar. Well, some spuds with imperfections are helping to address food insecurity and keep perfectly healthy food out of the landfill. That story coming up. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. A BC farm is helping take a bite out of food insecurity by giving away thousands of potatoes and other vegetables. They're slightly imperfect, but still nutritious. CBC's Yasmin Gandam paid a visit to the farm in Surrey to check it out.
Here, like that.
Right on.
Yeah, maybe like a duck.
Potatoes like this one up for grabs for free at the Ugly Potato Day, bringing in over 5,000 people. Tyler Heppel of Heppel's Farm says although the event is fun for the whole family, to him it's important as a farmer to eliminate waste.
People are really hurting right now with the prices of everything and having to decide if they can really feed their family 3 meals a day. And at the same time, we do this to show people that it doesn't matter what a vegetable looks like, it can still be nutritious and delicious.
The farm has partnered with the Greater Vancouver Food Bank for the event. Proceeds from merchandise like t-shirts and hats go towards the organization.
Try and make sure that that excess food gets out to people in need. And there's a huge amount of food out there, and it's not waste food. And I want to try and make sure we don't say waste food. This is perfectly good, nutritious food. It's just excess food now.
This is the 11th time Heppel's has put on Ugly Potato Day, but it's been the largest turnout so far.
We're Irish roots, so lots of potato.
People say with rapid inflation, it's becoming increasingly difficult to put food on the table.
Who can say no? You know, it's an amazing opportunity to prevent food that should be eaten from going to sort of animal feed or worse, the landfills.
The prices of everything is like crazy, so any chance that we can save a couple dollars, we'll take that opportunity.
Avery, why are you here today? All right. Free produce, and also there's so much here, like I doubt it'll be gone by the end of the day, so I just wonder what happens to it after that.
Heppel says excess produce often gets sold for cow feed. He hopes this event inspires other initiatives to reduce food waste.
And we hope to snowball this into something where all farmers can put out their ugly produce and help feed that their communities.
And it's not just potatoes. Ugly carrots, squash, and even pumpkins, all for the taking. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Surrey.
You probably know a foodie or two, someone who takes great interest in all things edible. And a St. John's grocery store now has one of them roaming the aisles, interacting with customers and offering recipe tips. But this foodie is, well, a little different than you might expect. Take a look.
It's a fun thing that customers look forward to, especially the kids. They love running after it. Customers just having like a little bit of fun and chuckle down the aisle. Just something for a little bit more interactive for them to see. On its belly, you can see how the products are being made and some recipe ideas and just some general details. And it winks at you. See, it's greeting us right now.
I love it.
We do embrace innovation as much as possible. When we have cool opportunities like this, we'd love to seize it. But it's all about striking the balance of who we are, and I'm finding a good fit for it. So this one, again, we love it more so for the product promotions, educating customers on our new products, and we love it for the engagement and the fun it brings for our customers. And that's where we see it right now.
John, we were talking earlier about how warm it was today in Winnipeg. Is any of that warm air going to make it up north?
It is, even now. As a matter of fact, our viewers in the north are probably saying the same thing we are saying, warm for September. We'll get to the north in a second. Here's a look at the current numbers here across southern Manitoba. Still some 25s and 26s out there. Over in the downtown area at the Forks, it's still 25 degrees. The high today was 27. And then we head out to the west, and temperatures right now are still up around 28 around Morden and in Winkler, in Brandon. Melita earlier was at 29 degrees, and we're looking at similar numbers for tomorrow. Now, a little farther to the east, you're farther from the warmest pool of air, so it is slightly cooler through the White Shell, southeast corner of Winnipeg, and in northwestern Ontario. And again tomorrow, about 5 or 6 degrees cooler. These are the current numbers across the north. Churchill right now is at 21. Absolutely beautiful. It's 24 in Lynn Lake, and another one of these days on the way for tomorrow. Now we have this little bit of cloud moving through the southeast through the evening hours, and that'll move off into northwestern Ontario. So a bit of cloud overnight, lows between 11 and 14. But here in the southeast and in southwestern Manitoba, we eventually clear from the west, so a relatively clear overnight sky in Winnipeg, and down to 13. Emerson clear and 13, and then lots of clear sky here in the southwest. And that means slightly cooler around Brandon at 9, Dauphin getting down to 11. And again, that's by early tomorrow morning. The evening temperatures will still be quite comfortable. These are the lows across the north. No rain to be had, not until probably Wednesday and probably north of Thompson, but cloudier tomorrow in western regions, so a little bit cooler. But you see the numbers out around Gillam and Island Lake, mid-20s, lots of sunshine, sun-cloud mix in Churchill and Thompson, and low 20s. And then here in the south, we're looking at temps as high as 30 degrees. Morden, Winkler, Carman could be included in that. Sunshine, 28 in Brandon, a sunny 26 in Dauphin, similar around 28 degrees for Portage la Prairie, and lots of sunshine here in the south. And I'm looking at 28 in Winnipeg, just down the road in Emerson, 29 in Steinbach at 27. Same with Sprague, and then off into northwestern Ontario. Temperatures are a little cooler, but normal highs here are about 16 or 17, so still very warm for this time of year. And I'll show you that in the 7-day forecast at the end of the show, the warm air, at least higher than normal, will continue through the weekend.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
More than just an academic conference, we'll hear from a University of Manitoba professor about why scholars are gathering this Friday to talk about Indigenous law. That's ahead. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Calls continue for more consultations nearly 3 months after Ottawa released its UN Declaration Act National Plan. The Liberal government says the plan will advance the rights of First Nations, Inuit and Métis people. The University of Manitoba's Faculty of Law is holding an academic conference that'll look at the details of the plan. One of the organizers is Leo Basketwang. He's an Indigenous scholar and law professor from Lac des Mille Lacs First Nation on Treaty 3 territory. I spoke with him earlier today. Hi, Leo. What can you tell us about the conference coming up on Friday?
So the conference is for our journal called the Interdisciplinary Journal of Indigenous Anishinaabe. We're getting together on Friday to welcome community members from Winnipeg as well as students from all campuses to learn about Indigenous legal orders, particularly as it relates to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and Canada's National Action Plan to implement that legislation.
Yeah, what is the connection between that declaration, the UNDRIP, and the conference?
It's basically just the first theme that we're having for the conference. So, as you know, a couple years ago, Canada developed new legislation to have its laws in line with UNDRIP. And so this conference is like an examination of the National Action Plan that Canada has developed.
And what do you think about that action plan?
It's like everything, it's got its strengths and weaknesses, but what we want to focus on in the conference is an Indigenous perspective because there's always going to be people who have something to say about it, and we want to hear what those voices are. And so in particular, we're going to celebrate community voices as well as emerging academics, but it's, like I said, it's welcome and it's open to everyone, especially anyone who has an interest in reconciliation and Indigenous legal orders.
Mm-hmm. And so with the National Action Plan, do you think that the government has paid enough attention to those Indigenous voices in the community?
Well, I think the government was on a really tight timeline, right? It had 2 years to come up with this National Action Plan. And it's good that it came up with something in its deadline, but at the same time, like, reconciliation can't be forced into like a pigeonhole. It's something that needs to be thoroughly considered, and we're hoping that this conference will provide an opportunity to give more attention to maybe some issues that were of less attention in that action plan.
What do you hope to discuss then? What are some of those issues?
Well, Indigenous legal orders in particular. So it's important that Indigenous laws in their own communities are recognized, attention to Indigenous languages in which those laws are based, education, and adequate funding for all these programs and services that are needed.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that's been a focus of your work at the university in, developing Indigenous legal practices?
So when I did my PhD at University of Manitoba, my research was in the Treaty 3 education law. And I recently published a book called Reclaiming Anishinaabe Law, and I talk about what that research entailed. Basically that the treaty right to education has largely been ignored. And it's basically this idea that Indigenous peoples have a right to educate their people in accordance with their own laws and policies, and the book is really a framework on how that can be done.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned inviting students out. Like, what role might they play in this conference for advancing that understanding?
Well, students are the generation of tomorrow, right? So, like, if we can have people talking about what issues need to be discussed, then students will have an idea on the sort of things that need to be considered and ways to move forward. And hopefully, as future policy administrators, lawyers, government officials, politicians, they'll have a better background on the issues that need to be addressed in society today.
What do you hope is the outcome? What do you hope everybody leaves the conference thinking about?
Number one, we just want to show that Indigenous legal orders are recognized and they're celebrated at Robson Hall, and that we're doing our part to decolonize our education programs there, so that we're creating a new cadre of lawyers that have knowledge and a firm basis in Indigenous legal orders.
Thank you so much, and good luck with the conference.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Still ahead, John Sauter's back with your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Well, you probably noticed the sun is setting a lot earlier these days, and at this time of year, the sunset times change rapidly. By the time we get to a week from now, we'll lose another, 15 minutes off this point in the day. And by the time we get to October 9th, just 3 weeks from now, setting before 7 o'clock at 10 minutes before 7. Long range, though, you wouldn't think it's September. 28 degrees tomorrow, low 20s, but a couple of low pressure systems move on through Thursday night into Friday, and it looks like again Saturday night into Sunday. Lots of four-legged fun for competitors and spectators alike.
Yes, John, lots of fun at this year's hot dog race in Ohio. Here's your daily lift. Dozens of dashing Dachshunds competed for top dog at the annual Running of the Wiener Dogs last week in Cincinnati, moving as fast as their little legs could carry them. It was part of the city's annual Oktoberfest celebrations. This year's race attracted 100 Dachshunds and lots of other mutts in all shapes, sizes, and costumes. 3-year-old Ruby took this year's prize for the fastest wiener dog. Along with the title, she gets a year's supply of pet food.
And all the hot dogs she wants to eat.
Yeah, could you get any cuter than that dog wrapped in a bun?
Yeah, cute dogs, but short legs for sure.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be back here at 11. Have a good evening.
Good night.